Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Galley Gab Fest. So glad you're here with us today. I'm Virginia Stanley, joined by...
Hi, I'm Lainey Mays.
And I'm Grace Caternolo.
And we are the Library Love Fest team. And we're so happy to be with you today on this snowy day, wherever you are. Maybe it's not snowing in certain parts of the country, but certainly snowy where we are in Brooklyn and Queens. So we have a really special episode today. We are talking mysteries, and we have three wonderful mystery writers joining us today. So we have Katherine Hall Page, Kate White, and Lori Rader-Day. And we're going to ask them to turn off their unmute and turn on their cameras so they can say hello for a minute or two.
Hi.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, librarians.
Oh my God. We're so happy that you're all here and on this day that we can all be together and just talk about these really cool, exciting new books that you've got coming out with this treasure trove of mystery writers joining us today, which is so lovely. And thank you so much for your time, librarians. As soon as we put the word out that we were doing this, yeah, I can already see Lainey shaking her head. People like, what? Yes, I'll be there. So super jazzed. You've got a lot of fans, you know that already, but I think this is unique community of librarians, and they are unique and special and wonderful as you are. And so we're just glad to have you here. So what we're going to do is have each author talk a little bit about their book, not too much because they're mysteries, so I don't want to spoil anything. And then please, we'll put each author back into the green room where they can enjoy oysters, Rockefeller, or M&Ms, or whatever they have at their homes. And then we'll bring them all back on after. So get your questions ready, write them in, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So Kate, Katherine, Lori, welcome. Happy to have you here. Anything you want to say before we send you off to Oysterville?
Well, I'd like to say thanks both as an author and as the daughter of a librarian. So it's so wonderful to be here.
Yeah, librarians, as Virginia knows, all these years that we've been working together are my very favorite people.
I mean, I owe my life as a reader to librarians, obviously, and also my career. So I'm very happy to be here. I wish I had snacks, though. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's still time because
To pick up some oysters.
You could go get the oysters, get a little wine or something. I mean, Catherine, speak slowly so they can go get some. All right. So, Kate, Lori, enjoy the talk, but sign off with close up your cameras and your microphones. And Lainey is going to talk to the wonderful Katherine Hall Page.
Hello. Thank you for being here, Katherine. So excited.
Thank you, lady.
Yes, your bookshelf behind you is very beautiful.
I know it's a little bit crowded, messy, but
I love that. I love the pictures too. Yeah,
it's
very nice. Okay, so I'm going to do a little intro and then I'm going to ask you to talk about the new book. So Katherine Hall Page is the author of 25 previous Faith Fairchild Mysteries, the first of which received the Agatha Award for Best First Mystery. The Body in the Snowdrift was honored with the Agatha Award for Best Novel of 2006. Page also won an Agatha for her short story, The Would-Be Widower. The recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award at Malice Domestic, she has been nominated for the Edgar Award, the Mary Higgins Clark Award, the McCavity Award. She lives with her husband in Lincoln, Massachusetts, and Deer Isle, Maine. And this is the 26th book in the award-winning Faith Fairchild Mystery Series. So I would love to hear more about The Body in the Web coming out in May.
Okay, well, it's very odd to be sort of back on the road, albeit virtually, because the last time I had a book come out was May 2019. So this is the first time I'm talking about a book that I wasn't really quite sure I was going to write. There have been other books that I've been wanting to write, standalones and so forth. But the Faith Fairchild series is, you don't have to read the series in order, but it is chronological. And people began getting in touch with me throughout the pandemic. It was really heartwarming to me that so many people were turning to the books either to reread them or had discovered them for the first time. And over and over, they kept asking for another one. You know, what had happened, what was happening to this family during this particular time. And it spurred me to write this book. And it's been a hard book. It was a hard book to write because, of course, there was so much sorrow and so much fear and anxiety during all of that time. It's, you know, still we're, I guess, living with COVID. I don't think we're post-COVID. But in any case, I thought, all right, I will deal with essentially a lot of the things that my family had been dealing with, including the loss, almost one of the first people to die of COVID in the pandemic was my brother-in-law, who was in an assisted living home in New Jersey. And it just went rampant throughout all of that. And that was in early April. So, you know, everything became very real. And I wanted to start the book not at that time period. I started it instead at the point where we had some, there was that whole promise of the vaccine and the hope that the vaccine would give. So the book actually starts with Faith sitting at her kitchen table, hearing that her husband, the Reverend Thomas Fairchild, has just gotten an early shot of the vaccine because he, besides the parish ministry, he's also a chaplain at the VA hospital. So he got it early. And she feels this enormous sense of relief, but then she begins to think back over all the time period, the lockdown, everything. Now, there are things in the book also, you know, that I think people will identify with. I mean, you remember all that scrubbing vegetables and not being able to find things, and you know, there's that. But the mystery, and very difficult to solve for Faith Fairchild during a pandemic, is that the art teacher, and all of the teaching, of course, is remote. Faith's kids, her son is in college, he comes home, he's remote. Her daughter's a senior in high school and spends her senior year remotely, losing out on all of that. And I talk a lot about the effect on families and in all sorts of ways of the changes. But anyway, so Claudia, close friend of Faith, art teacher, who is also an artist, a printmaker, she is the victim of a Zoom bombing. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's really a horrible thing that slightly predates the pandemic. And it's when a meeting, a public meeting, is hacked into, and obscene, racist, horrible things are put on the screens until the administrator or whoever can shut it off. And so that's what happens. And so there are these images of Claudia that are pornographic, that are just awful. And so eventually the result of that is what is the police and everyone considers a suicide on the part of Claudia, because she was so distraught at this Zoom bombing. But Faith, who knows her so well, knows that this was not what Claudia ever would have done. And so she knows it's murder. And the rest of, you know, she has to find out how this was accomplished, which is a little bit difficult because she couldn't go around knocking on people's doors or interviewing people, you know. So the book, you know, that's the mystery part, and of course I won't tell you who did it, but essentially the book, the point of the book was to reiterate that we were all in this together. And in the author's note at the end, a lot of people wrote to me and said that it reminded them of the book that I wrote after 9/11, in which I also, people had, they had that same feeling that there was this, this for, especially with this divisive times we're in now, there were these brief moments when we really were all pulling and helping one another. So that's an underlying message of the book. But my last little, I thought was interesting, all three of these books now, of Kate's and Lori's and mine, really deal with people with those false faces, with people, of course, secrets and lies and all of that, but people who are not what they appear to be. And it's interesting, I think the three books work really well together. If you want to read them, kind of in a row, there's a lot of crossover. Anyway, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. And I want to pass condolences for your brother-in-law. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
I saw that lovely acknowledgement in the book.
Yes, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Lisa Holstein on Facebook said, best COVID novel I've read. So interesting to read about the pandemic as it happened. Well done. And I think that's interesting. We've talked about this throughout the series we've been doing. What do you do with COVID when you're writing? Do you put it in the book? Do you sweep over it? It's interesting to see different authors have different opinions on that. And so this is, the main part of the book. So did you write it during all this happening, or did you have to take time to kind of process and then write?
Well, I kept a diary I started a diary. Actually, Norwegian relatives were in Boston. Even the husband had come for a conference at Harvard that Harvard had not canceled, oddly enough. And so I kept telling them, you can't come, you can't come. This was, the actual date was, it was March 9th. So, things were already heating up. And I said they were going to come stay with us, but I said, I'll come meet you. And at that time, no one was masking. It was a gorgeous spring day, believe it or not, no jackets. And so essentially the next day or 2 days later, the governor of Massachusetts initiated the lockdown. And so everything began happening, whoosh, like it was just this sudden tumultuous, everything happening like just faster than you can imagine. And I thought I should start to just write a couple of notes every day about what I was experiencing, all of the things, what I called foraging, because it was very hard in terms of getting food. And my son moved back in happily. So we did get to see him over those, because he ended up working remotely for 1.5 years. And so all of this, and I even began taking photographs if we went off on field trips to take hikes. And so I had all of the dates. I even kept a list of things that we ate. And in the recipes, which were a little bit more difficult than usual at the end of the book, because some people are not interested, which is fine with me. They're the kinds of things like you couldn't get yeast. So I was making beer bread. So in a sense, I was writing it, but I wasn't at that point intending to write the book. It wasn't until really close to the vaccination that January that I thought I would start writing the book. And that's what I did. Wow.
All of those notes are going to be a great archive too, just for the experience.
I think it's going to be interesting to see, and there are a lot of books that are referencing COVID and what people went through during that time. And we were very lucky because we were, the three of us together, and within walking distance of a farm, in fact, that began 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you could get, and they began bringing in all kinds of things. So we didn't even have to go into a grocery store. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for talking about the book. And before I hand it over to Virginia, I just want to read the starred library journal review for the book. It says the reader and the victim are both trapped in a web in the skillful combination of mystery and pandemic story. And I think that, yeah, you've just so skillfully combined both of those. So thank
Oh, well, thank you. I didn't know that about library journal. That's my
you.
ultimate. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm passing on to Virginia.
How fun to end that with a starred review. Very cool. And thank you, Catherine. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now Catherine will, there you go. And then we're going to bring on Lori. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm on vacation and it's snowing at home, but not here. So I'm heading off to Left Coast Crime in Tucson, Arizona in a couple of days. I'm already here in Tucson. I'm excited to see some mystery folk.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And it's
Will be.
nice that you're getting acclimated to the weather.
The time zone. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting acclimated.
That's good to do that, to have a
It's
fruitful
scientific.
time.
It's scientific. That's why I needed to be here in the sun early.
Well, glad that you're here. And glad that you're there and getting acclimated, and hope you have a great time. So you have a book coming out in October. So we have many months to talk about this book, but I love that Catherine pointed out what we've seen, and it really, I don't even feel like it was very like a conscious thing. We just, we wanted to have you three. We feel like you complement each other's writing, and you all have such distinct fan bases, and so, but there is such a connective tissue among these books, and so really psyched to hear you talk about The Death of Us, which is not the death of us, death of the book.
Not the death of us.
So yeah. But here I'll start a little intro, and then we can talk about the book a little bit. So, Lori Rader-Day, for those who don't know, which is no one, is the Edgar Award nominated and Agatha, Anthony, and Mary Higgins Clark Award winning author of The Lucky One, Under a Dark Star, The Day I Died, Little Pretty Things, and The Black Hour. She is co-chair of the Midwest Mystery Conference, and she served as the 2019-2020 National President of Sisters in Crime. Her most recently published book, Death at Greenway, won the 2021 Agatha Award for Best Historical Novel. That book blew everybody away. It made the October 21 Library Reads list. It was an Indie Next pick. It just raves and raves. You received glowing reviews. You received glowing reviews for all of your books. But Library Journal says your storytelling will thrill readers who can't get enough of the psychological suspense genre. Your forthcoming book, The Death of Us, which is out in October 2023, is a chilling suspense novel in which the discovery of a submerged car in a murky pond reveals betrayals and family secrets that will tear a small town apart. Tracy Clark, author of the Cass Rains and Detective Harriet Foster series, and she's the winner of the Sue Grafton Memorial Award, says Lori Rader-Day's The Death of Us is a deftly crafted, winding road of family secrets, unsolved disappearance, murder, betrayal, and complicated lives caught in the crosshairs of suspicion and lies. Masterful, riveting, what a ride. Lori, without giving too much away, tell everyone what you want them to know about your forthcoming book, The Death of Us.
Sure. What I want you to know is this is the first time I've been asked to talk about the book in this way. So I'm still trying to figure out how to talk about it. It is a complex story. So the story begins with just what you would think is an average family, maybe falling apart. It's the mother is Lisette. She's getting divorced from her husband of about 15 years, and they have a son. On the surface, that's what things look like, but their family origin story is very different from what you might expect. 15 years ago, there was a knock on the door, and Lisette went to the door, and standing in the rain is the woman, someone she went to school with, who her husband had cheated on with and produced the son. And the woman is there to leave their son with Lisette's now husband, but he's gone. So she hands the baby to Liz and disappears literally into the night and is never seen again. So Liz and her husband have been raising his son all these years, and this is her son. She loves him with all her heart, just wants to fiercely protect him. But when the story begins, the car that Ashley disappeared in is found. So that sort of tells you where she's been all these years, but also the car is found on their family property. So it's a big problem. It's the end of the mystery of her, but it's the beginning of the mystery of how she ended up there and what role Liz's family has played in this. Obviously, it's a big deal for the son, Callan. His biological mother is now not missing anymore. She's deceased and they believe murdered. So it's a mystery from there to figure out what happened to her and why. Also, second mystery, back when this happened, Ashley was seeing another man named Robbie, and very shortly after her disappearance, the community they live in, the small community in an unnamed Midwest state, they're all up in arms thinking he's had something to do with this, and he is struck by a car in the night and dies on the side of the road. So it's always sort of presumed that someone decided on vigilante justice for Ashley Hay. So now that we know, I'm not sure that he had anything to do with it. What does that mean for this town who has taken justice into their own hands and they have to live with what they've done? Listening to Katherine talk about her book and how our books are connected, I think it's that for me, I didn't want to write about the pandemic, not in an active way, not in a real way, but I think it's hard to write about real life. I write novels that are very much steeped in realism, so that it feels like, lives that you understand and have lived, or know people who are like, maybe not too like the characters that I'm writing about, but I didn't think I could ignore it. So I'm writing about the pandemic in a sort of aftermath kind of way. How are we different having lived through this together, and how has it forced us together and how has it forced us apart? And I think this town that I'm writing about, they would say that they have banded together, but have they banded together in a way that benefits everyone, or have they banded together in a way that actually costs people? So that's the story, and I don't want to talk too much more about it. What would you like to know, Virginia?
Well, funny you should ask, Lori. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I your last book set in World War II, right? So you're obviously, this is a contemporary story, and
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine how vastly different your approach was to writing this. But I wondered if you just could talk about that a little bit, because your last book was historical fiction, and this is entirely different. So what's that like for you?
Sure. Well, I mean, the historical novel was the one that was entirely different. My first 5 novels were contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the idea of writing about World War II because I discovered that Agatha Christie's holiday home, Greenway, had been used to house war refugees, children. And that was just a story that I wanted to read. I just assumed I could go, get that book, whatever it was. And I found that no one had written about it. So it became sort of this like the story of my heart that I really wanted to exist. And I had to do all the research because it hadn't ever been written about in any real way, just little pieces here and there. It was a little bit of a mystery, actually. It was about a bit of a puzzle to put together, and I had a hard time researching because I don't usually do that kind of research. I'm not a historian. I would even say that I didn't enjoy research up until that moment. I would mostly write my books the way I hoped they were, and then whatever I realized I didn't know, then I would find an expert who could tell me where I was wrong, or read a book, to know where I was wrong. A lot of guesswork, a lot of how would I feel or how would I think this goes. But for Death at Greenway, I had to research the war. I had to research England. I had to research the words that they used. Every third word I wrote in my book, I had to figure out, was that the right word? Would the English have said that? Would they have said it in 1941 as opposed to 1946, say? So it was a big challenge, and it took a lot of skin in the game for me. But it was also really rewarding. Some of the things that I was able to research and learn and bring back into knowledge was, it was really important to me to, for instance, find the real names of some of the people who lived at Greenway. Agatha Christie was not there. She went to London famously and became sort of picked up her training from World War I and became an apothecary's assistant again, and to be near her husband in London. So she left the house behind. Who was in the house? Finding out their real names and researching their real lives was very valuable. For contemporary, though, it was such a relief to be at least in okay, I don't have to think, would this person use this word? Is this how it would, I could just put myself into the position of someone about my age, maybe a little younger, and a mother. I'm not a mother, but there are things that I can sort of guess at a little more easily than Death at Greenway, World War II, historical bombing data. I mean, all the stuff I had to look up. It was a relief to write about the Midwest in current times.
I can only imagine. But the return to this contemporary writing, I'm sure had to be
it was a relief,
marketing.
but it was challenging in its own way. My editor, Emily Crump, says, you sort of turn every one of your books into a challenge, don't you? Yes, I do. I do find a way. But I was undergoing treatment for breast cancer starting in January of last year. And so I started writing this book while I was in chemo, and I had a little trouble writing. I don't think that's uncommon to have chemo brain, sort of a fog. So I didn't get a lot done, but I did get started. And so when I finally came out of that fog, I was able to finish the draft pretty quickly. I wrote it in about 5 months. So on chemo, I wrote the fastest book of my life. Maybe that is the relief of being in contemporary times. I'm just I'm having a great time.
Right.
I was not having a great time, but it was fast. Yeah.
Right. Well, obviously the most important thing is that you're okay and you rang that bell.
I did. I rang that bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad. All right. Well, we're gonna temporarily turn our cameras off so that Grace can introduce Kate White, and then there's lots of questions for everybody, so we'll get right to them. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Virginia.
Hey. Hi, Kate.
Hi there, Grace.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you.
Good. Glad to hear it. I'm doing fantastic because I get to introduce you. So couldn't be doing better. So Kate White, you have an upcoming book called Between Two Strangers. I'm going to keep it very vague because I want you to get the chance to talk about it. I absolutely devoured this book. It was such a page turner. And this is being published as a paperback, but it'll be also available as a library hardcover for all of our librarians. And it is on sale May 16th. So Kate is a former editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine and is a New York Times bestselling author of the standalone psychological thrillers, The Second Husband, The Fiancé, and The Secrets You Keep, among others, as well as 8 Bailey Wiggins mysteries. Kate is also the author of several popular career books for women, including I Shouldn't Be Telling You This, and the editor of the Mystery Writers of America cookbook. So I also wanted to share this praise for Between Two Strangers. Lisa Unger, the New York Times bestselling author of Secluded Cabin Sleep 6, says, Kate White's formidable talent for turning the screws of suspense is on full display in this deliciously addictive chiller. With her perfect pacing and gift for simmering tension, White deftly pulls back the delicate layers of secrets and lies, page by thrilling page. Whip smart, elegant, and utterly immersive. Between Two Strangers is as possible to predict as it is to put down. So Kate, thank you for being here, and I'll let you tell everyone more about Between Two Strangers.
Thanks so much, Grace. And I'm coming from my home in Uruguay, so if my internet acts up, please forgive me and know that I will be there in spirit if I'm not here in person. Between Two Strangers, and just like Lori, this is the first time I'm talking about this book, so it's interesting, but it's the story of an aspiring artist named Skylar Moore, who gets a call from an attorney one day who says that she has been left an inheritance. And yet it's a man she doesn't know. She doesn't recognize the name. And so she assumes that it must be a case of mistaken identity, or then she begins to wonder, possibly, is there some other kind of mistake? But when she goes to the lawyer's office, because he's insisted, no, there isn't a mistake, she realizes it's a man she had a one-night stand with 12 years before, and he has left her $3.5 million. And she can't figure out why. Her first thought is maybe he somehow followed her career, though they had no contact, and saw that she was an aspiring artist and was kind of a benefactor. But she realizes maybe she just needs to take the money and run. She's almost 38. She wants to have a child. She knows she's going to have to do it on her own, and she can't afford to do it right now. So this could be her salvation. But the man's wife is going to fight for the money. It looks like she's going to claim that Skylar might have been an extortionist. And it becomes clear Skylar has to figure out why he's left her $3.5 million. And that becomes her mission over a good part of the book. And she eventually even turns to making a collage, since that's one of the things she does professionally, is make collages. And she's hoping maybe that will trigger something for her if she uses elements from the night they spent together. And the real complication for her is that she met him on the weekend that it turned out her sister had disappeared. So as she tries to go back and remember that night and remember that weekend, it's going to dredge up all sorts of things for her about a period that she doesn't want to remember. And that's why she's tried not to remember much about this man, even though it had been a really powerful experience for her. One of the just little things I'll add that was interesting for me, and I don't think I realized this as I was writing it, but my mother had died 4 or 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years before I started. And my brother Rick was the executor, and he was looking into different parts of the estate she had left. And it wasn't some huge thing, but she had done well professionally. And one of the IRAs had disappeared. It had been sent to somebody whose name we didn't recognize. And so my brothers and I were kind of like, oh my God, did mom have a child that we didn't know about? Has she got some secret? And it turned out, finally, one of my brothers said, hey, isn't that one of the married names of one of our relatives? And we realized my mother had, it looked like, left her a chunk of money, but then it turned out to be a bank error. And yet the woman who'd gotten the money by mistake had kept it and not told us. So it was an interesting experience of just a few weeks of wondering about wills and the mystery of what had happened with this money of my mother's. And I think that's what got me thinking about inheritance and what if you were left something and you didn't know why. And that's what I think in my subconscious I've begun to play with.
That is fascinating. I'm really sorry about your mother's passing, but I would have been really alarmed as well. And it's crazy how one bank error, sparked this book. I just wanted to say that I really loved Skylar as a character, and her experience is not an average one, for people to say the least. But I found that, your use of the dual timeline really allowed for her to be fully fleshed out with her own, trauma and struggles. So I found her easy to connect with and root for. How do you find yourself balancing relatability with mystery plots?
Well, I usually find what helps me is with every protagonist, even as I've written now, this was my 17th suspense novel. And so 8 of them involved this one person, Bailey Wiggins, but the rest involved different protagonists. And if the protagonist is fairly different than me, I still try to tap into something in myself that helps me build the character. And as you said, Grace, it does have a dual timeline. There's the timeline from 12 years ago when Skylar met this man, when her sister disappeared, and then this timeline today. And Skylar, I hope readers see that she was pretty spirited then. She had a zest for life that all got tamped down because of what happened to her sister. And you don't know exactly what happened to her right away, just that she disappeared. But with Skylar, she really kind of removed herself from the world in a lot of ways, and is a little bit of a curmudgeon and removed from people, but missing that. And so I guess I tapped into the part of me that is a little bit of a loner. I'm one of those people, I guess, who, even though I ran the largest women's magazine in the world, I had to do a lot of stuff in public places because of that job. I think at heart, I like working in a little home office all by myself. So I tried to tap into that in building Skylar's character.
Thank you. I just want to welcome everybody back on for questions.
Have fun. We all hey, we're back. Just enough of a tease for everybody to download the books and start reading and start telling us your thoughts. So we will get to some of the questions, as many as we can get to right now. I just want to say, I am so sorry, Lori. I said your book is under a dark star, but it's not. It's under a dark sky. So in case you guys,
it was close enough. It was close enough. It's all about stars, so
No. I'm so sorry. But anyway, I want to make sure I got that clear. Okay. So Grace, Laney, do we want to get to some questions for our authors for the last 20 minutes or so that we've got?
Yeah, we have one that's in no way an easy question, probably, so I apologize, but what is the most difficult part of writing a mystery? So it's a very broad question and lovely, but also good luck. Maybe I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer, but
I'll go first. I think it's challenging to write. I write standalone novels. I don't think necessarily that series novels are going to be much easier. Katherine, you can speak to that. But I think it's difficult to make sure that you are writing a new book each time, making sure that you have a new protagonist and a new situation. I do tend to write in the stories that happen in the Midwest, so moving locations once in a while. I think it's a challenge to be interesting to yourself. I definitely want to make sure that I write, something new each time, challenge myself. Maybe not as much as I said earlier. I turn every book into a challenge, but I'm always trying to do something new, and that's difficult, I think.
I was about to say starting the book, getting started, but I think probably it's to make sure you're being fair with the reader, that you are providing reasonable clues and so forth. But what's hard is that you don't want, and I think we've all read books where who done it, like before the end of the first chapter. So you want the red herrings, but you want to play fair with the reader, and you don't want to introduce I always say the evil twin from Australia at the end of the book, and who has not appeared at all in the book before. So it really has to do with the relationship with the readers.
It's interesting because mine kind of would touch on Catherine's, in that I feel today there's so much out there in terms of psychological suspense and domestic suspense, that the stakes get higher and higher, and people, they want the twist. I saw one reader someplace said, if I'm not saying what the F every few chapters, it's the wrong book. And yet sometimes I read fiction in that category that is just like, whoa, that jumped the shark for me. I just, I don't buy it. So I keep trying to come back to making it more organic and authentic and character driven, so that it seems within the realm of possibility, as opposed to being so far fetched as some, I read a book the other day where the woman didn't have just one serial killer in her life. She had a couple, and it just defies the laws of probability.
We also got asked what everyone's reading right now.
I haven't started it yet, but I just got sent the galley for Dark Ride by Lou Berney, and I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited.
Oh, I love him so much. I just finished the newest Jane Harper last night, and God, I loved it. And she's somebody who I think really does a great job of having a twist that feels totally legit. And I love that book. The Exiles, it's called.
I actually have just finished. It has nothing to do with mystery or fiction. It's a nonfiction book called Your Table is Ready. It's about a man who is sort of the ultimate gatekeeper, maitre d' at all of these very famous New York restaurants, and it's all kind of the behind the scenes. It's sort of like the Anthony Bourdain was in the kitchen, and this was someone who was out there in the front, and it's it was fascinating. And then I've been reading a lot of British sort of between the wars fiction. Persephone Press puts a lot of these out, Dorothy Whipple, things like. So I just finished one of those. And in terms of mysteries, I've been turning back. One of the wonderful things about Agatha Christie, I find, is that I often can reread one that, I know what's happened and everything, and then I've totally forgotten who did it. So so I've been rereading. Those are real comfort reads, like when you have a cold. That's what I've been rereading. I just reread The Body in the Library, and had totally forgotten the ending.
I love that title.
I just read a book that Virginia sent me that I want to mention, Vintage Contemporaries by Dan Coys. I loved it. I loved it. So I'm like a Harper influencer now. She, sends me a book so I can pump it up, but I loved it.
Oh yeah, that's definitely going to be the side hustle.
Oh,
Mhm. Okay, yeah.
Virginia, we have to mention, because it's so fabulous about, because I believe this in my heart of hearts, that librarians are the ones who have always been right there battling for our rights. And there's that great book, and I thought it was out of print, but you have just told me that it is not, and it's how librarians and cybrarians have saved us all. So you can mention more particular about that because it's now, in terms of this absurd book banning and what's going on, you know, librarians are you know, they take such risks for us in order to preserve our freedoms.
It's absolutely true. And I would ask maybe Lainey or Grace if you could put, that's the Marilyn Johnson book.
Yeah,
And it's, if you could put that in the link, it's
it's fabulous.
still in
Mhm.
print, and it's, boy, she hit the ground running and she hit all the right marks. That is such a well-researched book, and it is, you know, she spoke to libraries across the country and at ALA, and singing the praises. She's not a librarian, but she has the utmost respect and you know, praise and gratitude for librarians. And so that is a wonderful book. And thanks, Catherine, for bringing that up.
Oh, it's really an important book.
And librarians are so good for nerds. I mean, I was such a nerdy kid and I didn't have friends, and I would go to the library and on those summer afternoons, and I felt it was like there was a sign over the door that said turkeys and nerds and losers are all welcome here. And it was just such a salvation for me.
It's a
Well,
pretty cool
I grew
thing.
up in the 80s during the, you know, book summer reading program, and you get free pizzas. The Purcell and Pan pizzas from Pizza Hut. And so, you know, thank you, librarians, for all those pizzas. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, you know, it's a ripple effect. You know, we say that, you know, you give a book to a librarian, it's like throwing a rock in a pond. That ripple effect is endless. So thanks, Catherine, for picking that up.
I actually have a question. I don't know whether anyone has read about this, what's going on in Vermont now, that because of lack of funds, they're pulling at the University of Vermont, they're taking all the actual books and stripping the shelves, not because of banning them, but because people are reading, students are reading online, and so they don't need actual books. And there's been this huge uproar in Vermont right now about the fact that these books are being taken off the shelves, and then they don't know what to do with them. And this is also a problem in terms of books. When you're culling your library and you want to give your books to where are you going to give your books, because you know what's happening to actual books. So this has made me a little bit worried about things. I mean, I read books on a Kindle or on a device, but the actual book is so important. But what the university has said is that they just don't have the money and the space to have enough space for all these books, so they've got to get rid of the actual book itself. So I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting you mentioned that. One of our librarians actually put that in the chat like 2 minutes beforehand, asking everyone's thoughts on that. So
Oh, okay.
you're reminded.
I'm worried.
Well, yeah, that was Gail Rosenfeld. She literally just, as Grace just said. So, you know, we'd love to hear from folks and what their thoughts are. I mean, you know, donations are made. You know, there's plenty of places around the city that accept donations, and prisons, and you know, community centers. So, you know, but if anybody has thoughts and want to, you know, throw in a thought or three, please do. I want to go back to the very beginning of the conversation and just tell you all that I mean, you can go back and look at this yourself, but there's librarians from all over the place: Chicago, Atlanta, Boston, New Jersey. Jennifer Winberry, who is big a fan of Katherine Hall Page, just wrote, "So excited. I've been addicted to Faith Fairchild ever since I discovered The Body in a Kelp. I went back and found The Body in the Belfry and have been an enduring fan ever since." There are Lisa Holstein, big mystery fan here, and she's just loves the COVID novel, best COVID novel she's read, and we already touched on that. I want to make sure that if we've gotten people have just books are fascinating. Let's see. I want to make sure that we get to any questions. I seldom read, or Lisa Holstein, I seldom read psychological suspense, but I read Lori Rader-Day's books.
Did we ask the seasons one? I don't know that we.
Which one is that? Great. Lainey, go ahead. You read.
So Nicole said, do you find a certain season is your
Oh, right.
favorite to set your mysteries in? And we'll start with Katherine.
I do. It depends. In order to keep the series fresh, I alternate what's called the Aylford books, where Faith is, and with the Someplace Else books, and a lot of those are in Maine, but they've also been in other parts of, in Norway and France and all sorts of other places. But so that kind of determines what season it's going to be. The main books take place during the summer. And the Body in the Web covers, of course, a bunch of seasons. I mean, it kind of goes January to May, but then it goes back over considerable amount of time. So yeah, the seasons vary enormously.
What about you,
It's
Kate?
interesting.
I have to say that it's funny you say that, because I would say a lot of my books are late summer, mid to late summer or fall. If possible, I have nothing taking place in the winter because I don't like snow. That's why I live in Uruguay in the winter where I am now. And so if possible, I have nothing ever taking place in the middle of winter.
Wise.
I live in Chicago. I get enough winter, so I really don't like to cover winter. Death of Greenway took place over several years, so it went through several seasons. The Death of Us takes place in the fall, mostly because I wanted to capture football season. You know, high school football season in the Midwest is a big deal, and that was an aspect of the story that I wanted to engage with. So, I can't remember the seasons of. You know, my memory is a sieve, so it's past books are all gone. I have to do a panel at Left Coast Crime this weekend, and they said they wanted to talk about The Lucky One, which was in 2020. And, you know, a lot of life has happened since 2020. So I'm going to have to bone up on my own book details before I go to that panel. But fall is a great season in the Midwest. So I like to spend time there if I can.
We do have one question on Crowdcast for Kate, that having been an editor for a significant portion of time, was it hard to be on the other side of the writing process when you began writing novels?
Well, what was great is that I could go out and do research, which was so hard when I was running Cosmo. You know, I would just try to sneak out places. I think the hardest thing is, they say in magazine journalism, it's all about telling. And as we know, fiction needs to be about showing. So you have to learn to burn off the need to tell too much. And that first book I did, I think I did many, many different versions of the first 10 chapters, just trying to burn that off, the need to tell too much. And but then once I learned to do it, I think it wasn't a big issue anymore, but they are very different.
Thank you.
We also had a question for all of you. Which book of your own is your favorite?
I get that question a lot. Don't you guys get that question all the time? I
have a favorite. It's
Oh.
The Body in the Sleigh. It just, you know, I find it, as I was writing it, I felt very close to it, and I first started as a short story, and then I felt and it was published as a short story, and in Mistletoe and Mayhem, and I told my agent I was really sorry that I hadn't been able to write it as a full-length book, and she said, well, why not? Why not? So that's what happened, and I really became very close to those characters.
I
So,
think it's usually
Lori,
whatever the most recent book is, the one that you're spending all your time with, the one you're married to, is usually the favorite. The one that other people say they love Little Pretty Things probably for the reason that the protagonist is the most likable of all the protagonists. She's a thief, but they seem to be able to overlook that.
I love flawed characters, as everyone knows. I love to hate a character. I'm definitely that reader.
For me, I would say, and I'm not just saying this because Between Two Strangers is my latest, but I really became invested in Skylar's yearning to have a child, and just how much she'd had to take herself away from the world, and how her mother seemed unforgiving of her. And I just felt myself emotionally connected to her because of that.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, authors often say the next one is their favorite. And I can see why, since it's just become probably a very big immersive part of your life. Shirley Landis writes, getting back to the question about donations in libraries and weeding and all that, she says, my hometown library no longer had space for their old Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys books, so I made a donation and got them. I was thrilled. How cool is that?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. There's so much love here. I think we've gotten to all of the questions. There's great love here. You can go back, as I say, and read all these. They're so thrilled that you're here, and just so much love for all three of these authors and your books. It's just everywhere, and it's wonderful. So many hearts are floating up. You've made everybody's day.
Made my day for sure.
What's that?
It's made my day for sure.
Aw, well, so what did somebody say, you guys? Something about Agatha Christie does something for a cold. What was that? It was a good one.
Well, it's when you have, that's a kind of comfort book when you're fighting a cold.
Yeah. So if you ever, Agatha Christie can keep you company as you, heal, as we all heal. I think, again, we've gotten to everything, unless Lainey and or Grace, I've missed something.
I mean, I could listen all day, but I think we got
Yeah.
to all of the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies. Really enjoyed it. And thank you
This
to
is so fun.
librarians everywhere.
And all of you guys, Virginia especially, been together so many years.
Well, it's been great. I've loved working with all of you, and will continue to work with all of you. Lori.
Lori, Catherine, so nice to spend a little time with you. And Catherine, thanks what you said about the connection of our three books.
No, it was really fun to think about. It's fun. Yeah.
Anything else before we hang up? Because nobody's telling us to hang up, but
We're the bosses.
I have one housekeeping thing, more of a reminder for everyone, but next Thursday we are having our Writers to Watch program at 7 p.m. Eastern time zone on the 23rd. And if you haven't attended before, it's very similar to this. We chit chat with some authors, and we have Patrick DeWitt, Laura Lippman, Susan Wiggs, and Annie Lyons joining us next week. So if you can't get enough of author talks, make sure you tune in. And that will be available on Crowdcast and Facebook as well. And we can put the link in the chat.
Yeah. And if we could show the jackets one more time, and I don't know, while I was speaking with Lori, if that's little snapshot was shown from her Instagram page, which I love. You all have such great sites, and there's so much information. So you should go to these, go to their individual websites, because there's newsletters and blogs and updates and just
Yeah.
lots of information.
And I know in chat, everyone's wondering, Lori, where your e-galley is. It's coming. It's close. The cover is almost final. So everyone just be patient. I know everyone's excited. I am too. So just wanted to throw that in there, very close. And we'll update the chat when it does, so everybody can grab it.
Here are the wonderful covers, even the work in progress.
Yeah, that one's super. The ink is just dry. It's so exciting. I love we can get way ahead of things like an October pub. We are so excited for Catherine's book and Keith's
Yeah,
book.
this is this cover that's essentially my cover reveal right here. If it, they're just getting image permissions. So
Yeah, I don't know. We put the cover not final on there because it may have a tweak or three. Who knows? But it's pretty arresting, as are all of these very spooky,
that's
intriguing jackets.
very
So,
cool covers.
yeah. Hey, listen, thank you so much for taking the time, for everybody for tuning in, and enjoy the reads. And we'll have Lori's up as soon as it's gone through. We'll have Lori's e-galley up as well. So we thank you all so much for taking the time. Thank you, Catherine, Kate, and Lori.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Be well. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.